department and the captain, who's become a really good friend of mine, Michael Patterson, and have him fill in all the details so I could put all the pieces together. That morning is pretty much a blur. I remember mostly trying to comfort others that were coming to our home that morning. I do remember my husband arriving that morning, and but pretty much beyond that, as some of you who are grieving know, you go into shock. Many people told me that I was in shock. I didn't really believe them. I didn't know what shock was, but looking back, that's exactly what was happening. And from the beginning, I really, as odd as it may seem, I really tried to find the blessings in my grief. And one of those first blessings was Garrett being behind that door. I wouldn't be standing on this stage today had I seen my son. So that was my first blessing. Then I'll just share with you that when my husband's grandfather passed away, we started finding pennies. And we would tell the boys from the time they were little, because they were like 10 and under, when Grandpa Babst passed away, that when we would find these pennies, they were pennies from heaven. So after Garrett's death, I started finding pennies tails up, which Garrett was kind of a character. So I thought that kind of fit his personality, like, well, if he's going to leave me pennies, they're going to be tails up, because he's kind of that kind of kid. But I always dismissed it. Always. I just be like, I'm some crazed, grieving mom that just wants these signs from my son, that he's somewhere right around me, by me, and yet they kept happening. When Garrett passed away in November, it was beautiful. It was beautiful for the entire week. The day of his funeral, same thing, just a beautiful sunny day. And as we left the church, when we were making the arrangements at the church, I remember the priest asking us about how many people, because the women of the church want to put together the food. So can you tell us about how many people you think will be there? Well, we didn't know. So my other son Joshua said, well, I think probably it's on a Monday, people will be working, kids will be in school, so let's just say 125. And the priest said, okay, we'll just go with 175 and we should be covered. There were over 500 people there at the funeral. Standing only. I mean, it was amazing. So my husband and I stood for like 2 hours greeting and hugging people. I didn't even know you could get sore from hugging, but you can. So when it was time to leave, I collapsed in the car. My husband and some friends were putting food and flowers into the car, getting ready to return home. And as my husband came to the car, he said, come over here and look at this. And I said, I'm so exhausted, please, what is it? And he said, just come over here and look. And I went over to the side of the car, and right by the driver's door was a penny. I loved it, but at the same time, I still thought, this stuff, you want something so desperately. Next morning, it rains. We experienced this beautiful weather for a week, and the next morning it's just pouring rain. My husband and my son Josh go to Starbucks to get some coffee, turn the windshield wipers on. I worked at the time at a place that had lots of pine trees, so pine needles were common under my windshield wipers. And so there was something under the wiper. Asked Josh to get out and get whatever was under Mom's windshield wiper out from underneath it, and it was a penny. So that day forward, I told my Garrett, I'm so sorry for dismissing you, trying to show me that you're right here with me. I'll never do it again. And to this day, it still continues. In fact, today, before I arrived, Anastasia Allison, who has the inspired entrepreneur, texted me and said, Bethany, who is Hiking to Heal on Facebook, some of you may know her, arrived here today and found a penny on her bumper of her car. So as I bravely stand here and speak to you today, I've got my penny from Garrett. It was tails up, so I know it's from Garrett. JT leaves me pennies heads up, and dimes, and I can't tell you why I know that the dimes are from JT, but I just know as his mom that the dimes are from him. Music has also been a thread after my loss of Garrett, his communicating through music with me. One of the very first songs that he had brought to my attention was Vincent, or Starry, Starry Night, about Vincent van Gogh, who also tragically died by suicide. And when loss happens, I found that many of my friends wanted me to stay busy, asked me to do many things. And one of my friends had contacted me and said, Nancy, I'd like to take you to this wine and wellness night. Well, or it was wine and canvas, excuse me, wine and canvas. Well, I don't like wine. I'm not really a painter, not very artistic. My Garrett was very artistic. And so I just declined right away and said, no, I have plans. She said, okay, well, why don't you just check it out, and if you find something there that interests you, just let me know. So I clicked on the link, and sure enough, Thursday night's class was Starry, Starry Night. So I contacted Cheryl back and I said, I'm supposed to be there Thursday night. So I went to the, well, I'll just back up a little bit. Before that, when we were making the arrangements after Garrett had passed away, just a parent's nightmare. Sitting at the funeral home, our family trying to decide what we were going to do with Garrett's body. Were we going to bury him? If so, where were we going to bury him? We didn't want him to be alone, as silly as that sounds. Yet my daughter and I had difficulty with cremation, with the idea of it. But that's what we decided to do. So his friends didn't really have a place, right, to go to be with him, if you will. Graveside, a memorial on the side of the road because he'd been in an accident. He was now in our home, in his room, that I had, some would say, set up as a shrine. So I had, again, at Garrett's urging, had heard him saying, you need to have an open house, Mom, you need to have an open house. My friends need to come and be with me. So I planned this open house, and the principal of their high school, my children attended and graduated from Auburn Mountain View High School. And the principal of the high school had come because there had sadly been 12 students who had been involuntarily admitted when Garrett passed away. So she was on a mission to get a mental health counselor in the school, and she wanted my help, if I could help at all. And of course, I'm gonna try and do whatever I can to help. So she invited me to a breakfast with Auburn Youth Resources. I thought it was just a small breakfast. I had no idea what it was about. So Thursday night was the painting of the Starry, Starry Night, which I just asked Garrett to guide my hand. The painting turned out beautiful, I think. Friday morning was the breakfast. I go to the breakfast. It is a huge breakfast. The chairman of the board of Auburn Youth Resources was an ex-Seahawks player. There were Seahawks players there. It was a big fundraiser. And again, I have to back up because one of the nights that I had left work, I was leaving work, I had finally been able to gain my composure and return to work. And when I was leaving one night, I hear Garrett say to me, Mom, remember that Billy Joel lullaby song, Mom? And I said, oh my goodness, Garrett, I forgot about that song. I don't even know if I even shared that song with you. So I went home and I put on my iPad, and if you haven't listened to that Billy Joel lullaby song, he wrote it for his daughter, and it's an absolutely beautiful song. I encourage you to listen to it. And so I get to this big breakfast. I'm overwhelmed. Lots of people, lots of noise. I don't know where I'm supposed to sit. I finally find a seat, and the Thomas Jefferson Choir is singing a song. Can't really hear it that well because of all the noise. People are getting their breakfast, but something catches my ear. And I think, are they really singing the Billy Joel lullaby song? What choir sings the Billy Joel lullaby song? It was just incredible to me and overwhelming. The morning proceeded to be overwhelming for me because there were children there sharing their stories, their struggles, their attempts with suicide. And even though I was only there to listen and not share, it was still incredibly hard for me to listen. At the end of the program, they played a video of Auburn Youth Resources in the community helping these youth. And as the video's playing, there's a song in the video. And I hear Garrett again say to me, "Mom, pay attention to the song." I don't know the song, I never heard the song before. I wish I would have brought my program. I still have my program to this day. I turned my program over and I wrote some of the lyrics down. When I got to work, I looked up the song. And the song is by Mindy Gledhill, and it's called All About Your Heart. And this is how it begins. "My imagination pictures you like a painting by Van Gogh. Starry nights and bright sunflowers," which by the way are my favorite flower, "follow you where you may go. Oh, I've loved you from the start in every single way, and more each passing day. You are brighter than the stars, believe me when I say, it's not about your scars, it's all about your heart." Garrett could not be closer to me. I was overwhelmed. And a mess still. In December, so Garrett passed away November 10th. In December, I believe it was December 13th, I was at work and I was crying uncontrollably. I had to leave. I went home and found this book that my husband had brought from a coworker. I opened the book, and in the book he had wrote a letter to our family telling us, now mind you, my husband and him may say good morning to each other on occasion, but that was the extent of it. But Doug was so affected by what had happened with our family that he mentioned to his counselor what had happened with us. The counselor sent a book with him that he then wrote a letter stating how he had been affected by our family, and that if we wanted to ever speak with someone, we could contact his counselor. So I picked up the phone and I called her, and she called me back that afternoon. When she called me back, she was so lovely to me. But she said to me, "Nancy, you're in Auburn, I'm on Mercer Island, you've been through enough stress. I'm gonna refer you to somebody because I think you need to stay local." And I said, "Well, Teresa, I'd really like to meet you just one time. Can I just meet you one time?" And she said, "Certainly." Set up the appointment for the following week, went to her, sat down in the chair. She came, sat down, and she said, "Let me tell you a little bit about me, and you can decide if this is gonna be for you." I said, "Well, can I please tell you a little bit about me first?" And she said, "Certainly." So I said, "You know, I'm the type of person that I look at all the circumstances, right? This book was sent for our family by you. You don't know us. The gentleman that gave it to us hardly knows us, but was so affected by what had happened with our family, he told you about us. I called you, you were lovely with me on the phone. I think I'm right where I'm supposed to be." And she said, "Okay, let's get started." And I still see her every Tuesday to this day. She is, I don't know where I would be without her. So time goes on. In my family, I have one daughter and 4 boys. My daughter's the oldest. Then there's JT and Garrett, Josh, and Alex. So after Garrett has passed away, my boys decide that they're going to take a snowmobiling trip to McCall, Idaho. Something all my boys had done in the past. I never joined them. I'm not a fan of the cold. I'm more of a fan of a clean house. So when they go away, I get a clean house. It gets to stay clean for a few days before they come home. So I was excited for them. Everyone was a little bit nervous that I was going to be in the home where I had found, I say found, but I never saw Garrett, but where I had found that Garrett had passed away. But I was going to make it. I was strong. I was going to do it. I was going to be okay. So you guys go, have your time together, spread some of Garrett's ashes at the hot springs, and just have that time together. So it's a Thursday night. That night I had seen my counselor, Therese. She couldn't see me the following week, but I told her it's okay because I'm gonna be strong, I'm gonna get through this, they're gonna go on this trip, I'll make it. She was completely booked the following week. So Thursday night, my husband, his friend Mark, who had girls only, so my boys were like his boys, and my 3 boys went off on this snowmobiling trip. JT was working at Burlington Northern Railway at the time, and he was working a swing shift, so he worked from 3 to 11. So his girlfriend Kelly took him to work that day, and then picked him up, and then met his brothers, his dad, and Mark on the I-90-18 interchange, and they left from there. So I didn't get to say goodbye to my JT, and we were a super close family. JT rarely went anywhere on any trip, didn't matter the time, without kissing, hugging me goodbye. He just didn't do it. So when they arrived on that Friday, he called me. Hey Mom, we made it. I'm sorry I didn't get a hug and kiss you goodbye. I said, it's okay, JT. I'll see you when you get home. Just have a really good time. Okay, see you then, Mom. That night after work, I went, picked up my granddaughter, brought her back to the house. JT FaceTimed me. Had a nice conversation, and that was the end of it. The next morning, I woke up with my granddaughter, got her ready. JT's girlfriend came over to the house. We were gonna go see Paddington. One of the women that I worked with at the time said, you know, it kind of can be, even though for kids' movies, it can kind of be a tearjerker. So I'm thinking, I'm already a mess, so I better take some Kleenex. So I pull the Kleenex out of the box, and it's the last of the Kleenex. I am thrilled. I am so sick of Kleenex. We go off to the movies. The movie is coming to an end. So I scroll through my phone, and I have a text message from my father-in-law. Where are you? I'm at the movies with my granddaughter. Well, you need to come home. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, these guys are being ridiculous. I'm fine. It's a beautiful Saturday. Why are you worried about me? I do not need to come home. I'm at the movies with Lily and Kelly. I'm fine. So he texts me again. What theater are you at? Kent Station. So I look at Kelly, because the movie had now ended. We're still sitting in our seats. And I said to Kelly, is there anything on Facebook from JT? Do you have a text message from JT? She said, no, nothing. And I said, I think that there might be something wrong because Jim's dad keeps trying to get me home. So I called him from my seat and I said, what's going on? And he said, you just need to come home. So I looked at Kelly and I said, something's wrong, we have to go home now. So she grabbed Lily, we ran to the car, I drove as fast as I could home. And when I pulled up to my house, there's cars in front of my house that I have no idea who they are. My garage door is open. So I get out of my car, Kelly's gonna get Lily out of the car. And as I walk into the house from the garage, I walk in and the door opens this way. So I open the door, and as I open the door, Mark, who had been on the snowmobiling trip with them, Mark's daughter and wife are standing in front of me. And to the right, Jim's parents are standing there, and I could tell they'd been crying. So when I opened the door, I said, I'm not doing this again. I can't do this again. And I shut the door and I walked back outside. And I walked around for a little bit. I don't really remember what I did. Kelly and Lily remained outside. I finally got the courage to go inside. When I walked inside, I said, don't come near me, don't touch me. I have done everything right since Garrett died. I have gone to counseling, I've gone to grief group, I just started breathing normal again. I'm not doing this again. And I cannot tell you how much time passed before I finally got the courage to go up to Jim's mom, and I was so angry with her when I went up to her. Not with her, but I was just so angry. And I said to her as I walked up, I said, Who are you gonna tell me now? Do I get a pick this time? And she said JT had passed away. And I walked away, walked in the living room, bent over, and screamed and screamed and screamed. How was I going to do this again? And as I stood there at the kitchen counter, poor Mark's daughter, who did not want to be there, said to me, I can go get you whatever you need. What do you need? And I said, well, I want some tea, and I don't have any Kleenex anymore. I just used the last of my Kleenex. Can you please get me some Kleenex? But I remember thinking, and I don't know how this came to my mind, but I remember thinking, there was a plane accident in January. This was now February 28th. Less than 4 months later, was I now losing another son. I remember thinking about that little girl who had been in the plane crash, and she had lost everyone. Her mom, dad, sister, cousin. She had nobody. It kind of put things a little bit in perspective, but I mean, I wanted my son back, right? I want my boys back. My family couldn't come home, my husband and sons couldn't come home, and Mark could come home that night because they had to deal with the coroner, police reports. So when they arrived the next day, the boys had big rollaway bags that they had all their snowmobile gear in, and they had brought JT's gear in, his bag in, and they rolled it in, and our house at the time was open kitchen, living room, and they'd left it like right between the kitchen and the living room. And when someone dies, your house becomes full of people, right? Everyone shows. So I'm thinking that I have to move this bag. So as I pick up the bag and roll it to the back door, because no one's gonna be going out the sliding door because it's February, it's cold, I laid the bag down. And I thought, no, I better, just in case someone does need to go out that door, I better just stand it up. And as I stood it up, 2 Hershey's Kisses rolled out of the bag. So I got my kisses from him, just not in the manner that I wish that I had. Those Hershey's Kisses are still in my bedroom dresser drawer. So like I said, in my grief, I've really tried to find the blessings, the pennies, the Hershey's Kisses. Like I said, JT leaves me the heads up pennies. And for those of you that have lost, you may experience this as well. They're always around me. I didn't have to think about that before, right? When you are growing up and you think that you're going to live a full life, you don't think about death. You think, I can only speak for myself. I thought you live, you die, you go to heaven. All that other stuff after you die, I didn't have to think about. I didn't think about, like, well, what actually does happen? Am I really feeling what I feel? But I feel it all the time. They're always around me. The 3rd year, by far, has been the hardest. I remember being in my counselor's office, uncontrollably crying, saying, I'm so tired, I can't do this anymore. And we had decided to move shortly after JT had passed away. JT died in February. By the time I think that June came around, as hard as I tried to stay in our home, my husband and I both worked long hours so we could avoid being home. Our kids were away, so they didn't have to come home. And I contacted a real estate agent. My husband didn't even know I had contacted them. Contacted a real estate agent that we knew, a friend of ours, and said, I can't stay in our home any longer. Can you please find us a home on some acreage, a small rambler on some acreage? Jim would love that. Went to dinner with friends that night, And as we were out to dinner, the friend said to me, have you thought about moving? And I said, well, funny you're asking me because Jim doesn't even know this, but I contacted a realtor today. And he said, you did? And I said, I did. And he said, I've just been waiting for you. I'm ready. So we got the house ready, like in record time, painted, and on the market, and 6 days later had sold. We had no place to go. We had no idea where we were going. Had found a lovely place in Hobart, but the gentleman wouldn't sign the paperwork. Just would not sign the paperwork. And when Jim and I went there to look at this lovely little cabin, it was like 700 square feet cabin on 16 acres. When I had gone into the cabin to look at it, this was just someone's getaway, right? It was just a single older gentleman that owned it. He hadn't even been there for like 2 years. And on his dining room table in this little living room was a book about Van Gogh. I thought, oh my goodness, this is our home. The boys have led us here. This is where I'm supposed to be. I go through the cupboards. I have a lot of trust issues. I open the cupboard, and in the cupboard is this plastic water bottle that has this covering around it that was just odd, that had the word trust on it. I made my husband take a picture of the water bottle, the book about Van Gogh. I said, this is where we're supposed to be. But weeks go by, this man will not sign the paperwork. We've made a full price offer, he will not sign the paperwork. He said, you can just move in. Just move in. I want you to be the stewards of my property. I can't move into your house with my stuff. Like, you need to sign the papers. And I was so torn because I really felt as though because my realtor was now Nancy, we're gonna have to start looking for another home. And I'm like, but this is where my boys have led me. I can't betray them. I can't betray what I'm thinking that they're telling me. So as I'm driving home one day from work, I hear my boys say, Mom, just because those things were in that house, Mom, does not mean that that's where you're supposed to go. It just means it's okay to go. So go. The next day, my realtor sent me this listing here in Enumclaw that had been on the market 2 hours. So I said, I'm at work, where are you? I worked in Covington at the time. She said, I'm shopping in Covington. I said, I can leave, come get me, let's go look at the house. Went and looked at the house, put an offer on it, and that's where we live today. And when we came here to Enumclaw, even though I'm from Maple Valley, I didn't come to Enumclaw a lot other than for the fair when I was a kid. I didn't know there was a Garrett Street in town. And when you come to our house, you have to go over Burlington Northern Railroad tracks. So we totally felt as though our boys had led us to our new home. So we had a big open house after we had moved in to thank everyone that had come, to tell them thank you for their support and love, and this is now where we were going to be living, and just had a wonderful time with all of them. JT's girlfriend Kelly had stayed the night along with my son Joshua's roommate Alan, and Kelly and Alan decided they were going to go on that Sunday, it was a beautiful day, and go walk the railroad tracks. So they're down at the railroad tracks walking. Well, I guess I have to back up and tell the story about when JT first started at the railroad. He'd gone to school at UTI, became well, he was just a really good diesel mechanic. And he got on with the railroad right before he even graduated. They had hired him. It was like a dream come true. And we were so proud of him. And so they have family day at the railroad at BNSF. And so we went, he couldn't wait for us to go to family day. So when we went to family day, I didn't realize it, but BNSF has their own police. So I see the cutest police officer. And I could tell that she just had this awesome personality, beautiful smile, and JT at the time wasn't dating the nicest of girls. So I said to him, Junior, like, first of all, I didn't know there was a police department, and second of all, do you see that girl over there? Because she is so cute. You need to get to know her. Well, then JT dies. So back to Kelly and Alan walking the railroad tracks. As some of you who are from the area may know and have seen, those railroad tracks are not used, but there were lumber cars on the tracks, and the kids were pulling the brakes, and the cars were rolling across our street, which is extremely dangerous. You can't just push them out of the way. So they had sent this officer to patrol the tracks. She wasn't very happy to be coming down to Cumberland, an area that she didn't know, and be pulled off a festival that she really was looking forward to patrolling. So as she pulls up, here's Kelly and Alan on the tracks. Excuse me, you're trespassing on railroad property. I need to see your ID. Alan proceeds to give his ID. Kelly doesn't have her ID because what women go on a walk with their ID. So Anastasia says to Kelly, just give me your name. What's your name? Kelly says, Kelly Herzog. Anastasia looks at her, stops the recording, says, I know who you are. I was at your boyfriend's locker when they cleaned out his locker. I'm so sorry for your loss. I've been Facebook stalking you and his family. And I'd really like to meet his mom and dad. Do you think they'd want to meet me? They exchanged phone numbers. Kelly said, they just live like right up the street. I'm sure they'd want to meet you. Kelly has no idea of the story that I had with JT and this woman that I wanted him to date. So she comes home and she says, Nancy, I met this officer and she was at the locker when JT passed away when they had to clean out his locker. And you know, she'd really like to meet you if you'd like to meet her. And I said, oh my gosh, like, I know who you're talking about. She was supposed to be my daughter-in-law.
That's crazy.
And the next day she came to our home and we have been friends ever since. Well, she left the railroad, started this inspired adventurepreneur. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say.
Okay.
And she started doing podcasts about her hiking and adventures and violin, and started to encourage me to do podcasts about my grief journey. And I said, I'm not doing it. I had no interest in doing it. I had no interest in sharing my story, and that's kind of a lie. I mean, I was just talking to my grief counselor. I just saw her on Tuesday, and I said, Therese, how long has it been since I've been saying I want to speak about my boys. I want to talk about my boys. Like, how am I going to do that? And she said, pretty much after JT died, you've been talking about how you were going to share their story, but we didn't know how that was going to happen. I didn't know how that was going to happen. But I just knew that, I mean, when you lose, I never want my boys to be forgotten. Grief, the one thing that I've learned is, and makes me the saddest, is I have to tell people what they were like, who they were as people. I was their mom, I knew them best, but I don't think I can do them justice. They were amazing young men. So, I kind of lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
I get up on these tangents. Oh!
You were talking about me and the podcast.
Oh, yes. So Anastasia, she leaves her job at BNSF to live her dreams. I am jealous. I've lived with fear my entire life. Like, if my parents instilled anything in me, it was fear. Why couldn't I be like her? Why couldn't I go do the things that I wanted to do? So I was pretty much ignoring her from this point forward because I was extremely jealous, seriously. I have no problem saying that. Extremely jealous of her and what she was doing with her life because she was soaring. So one morning before work, I'm scrolling through my Facebook and there's Anastasia playing her violin. I'm like, okay. Truly, I'm not lying. Okay, there she is. And I see in the caption, lullaby. And I thought, she cannot be playing the Billy Joel Lullaby song. Nobody knows that song. So I flipped back, and sure enough, she's playing the Billy Joel Lullaby song. So I sent her a message and I said, Anastasia, I can't ignore it anymore. My boys keep bringing me back to you. Time and time again, I think I'm supposed to do this podcast. And she said, I think you are too, Nancy. I've thought it for a long time. I mean, I'm talking like a year of trying to get me to do this podcast. And so we did. She came over to my house. We sat and did three podcasts that day. And from that, created my website, nancybabst.com. There you can find all the podcasts along with, so we did the 3 in my home, and then decided that she would invite me to her closet in her home to do some additional podcasts. And as I'm driving to her home, the principal of the high school contacts me, messages me, and says, I've listened to your podcasts. I've loved every one of them. I want you to know that at the end of this school year, there will be not only a mental health counselor full-time at Auburn Mountain View, but we're hoping to have a mental health counselor in every high school at Auburn, in the Auburn School District. So I told her, I said, I hope that I didn't portray you or the school in a negative light. And she said, absolutely not. We need to keep the conversation going. These kids are in trouble, and we need to make sure we have the resources available to them. So I asked her, okay, Mrs. Herron, do you think it's possible? I'd really like to establish a scholarship in my boys' names. And she said, no problem. And I said, no, don't tell me no problem, because I'm gonna get my heart set on this, and then it's not gonna come to fruition. So I need you to be honest with me and tell me, is this really a possibility? And she said, I think so. I don't see a problem. Give me your phone number. We were messaging via Facebook. Give me your phone number, and we'll talk on Monday. Monday, she gave me the name of Judy Dutton, who establishes all the scholarship. And so we have established the Babst Memorial Scholarship for the trades. Both my boys were in the trades. JT, like I said, was in the machinist union, worked for the railroad. Garrett was in the laborers union, was working at the Bellevue, the new Bellevue Marriott at the time of his death. My husband's been in the trades since he graduated high school. I've worked in the trades since 2005, and our youngest son now is in the carpenters union. The trades have been remarkable to our family, and I don't believe that the trades are promoted the way they should be in the high schools. You know, you're either going off to a 4-year college or you're going into the military, and I want these kids that are graduating to know if you're good with your hands, you enjoy working with your hands, this is an option. You can make really good money, have really good benefits, and a really good retirement. So in establishing my website, Anastasia said, well, you need a logo and you need a mission statement. The funny thing is that when I had shared my story, because I will share my story with anyone that will listen, so if you're a good listener, I'm sharing. And I had shared my story with a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in some time. And after we had parted ways, she sent me a message and said, Nancy, you're beautifully brave. And I'm kind of the person that I don't accept compliments well, but there was something in that she said that just really spoke to me, and I really embraced that. So I wanted a bumper sticker that said beautifully brave on it. But beautifully brave is about this long, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't want something that long on my car. So I have a friend here in town that does decals, so I contacted her and said, can you just put a B and then a heart and then brave, and I'll know it's beautifully brave for me, and anyone reading it will just read it as be brave. And maybe whatever they're going through, that will help them to be brave too. So that's what I did. So I told Anastasia, well, I've already got that. Mm-hmm. And I really already knew too, in dealing with my grief, what my mission was. And that is, in my grief, I want to break the stigma and shame and language that surrounds suicide. If you have been affected by suicide, the one thing that I found myself doing after my Garrett died, and mind you, he showed no signs to me. My daughter, on the other hand, at the time, was suicidal. She had let her postpartum depression get away from her. She was admitted not once but twice at St. Joe's mental ward. Horrible to know your daughter's locked up and I have to ring to go in to see her. But she had cried out. She was getting help. My Garrett, we had no idea. So I found myself trying to explain him so that people wouldn't have a bad feeling about him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want people to think badly of him. I want them to know that he's a lovely person. And there's so much, I think, shame and stigma that surrounds suicide that I really want to break those walls down and say, no, these people, that was not my Garrett. When my Garrett decided to put that belt around his neck and use that door that prevented me from getting into his room, that was no longer my Garrett. We were a close family. He would not do that and know the hurt that he was going to create as a result of it. The language. I cringe when I hear the media or someone else say to me, they committed suicide. My Garrett committed nothing. He died by suicide. That is the manner in which he died. When someone commits something, there's thought, there's planning. I believe my Garrett in an instant thought and was fed those lies. Everyone will be better off without me here. I'll be happier not here. Whatever the lies were that fed him until he took his own life. So I really want to educate people on the language that surrounds suicide. And then I also want others that are grieving to grief. I found to be very lonely. When my boys died, some people only have 2 children. I'm living every parent's nightmare. I know that. If they were to have the loss that I had, they would have nobody left. I had parents tell me, I can't be around you anymore, Nancy. I can't. It's too painful for me to be with you, around you. I get it. I do. So grief can be very, very lonely. I personally knew that I could not do my journey alone. I sought grief groups. I was lucky enough to, be brought a counselor that has helped me along this way, but I also sought out other parents that have lost. Because they're the only ones that understand. We don't even have to have communication between us. We can look each other in the eye and know the pain that we are feeling of the loss of our children or loss of someone. So I want to tell people to lock arms. If you're grieving, please don't try and do this journey alone. It's not meant to be alone. We need to lock arms. We need to stick together. Some people say that I'm strong. And I don't know what that is in me that makes me who I am. I'm thankful that I'm able to get out of bed every day, continue on my way. I don't really feel like I have a choice, though. What choice do I have? I could stay in bed. It's not going to do me any good. I don't want to hear that that's not what my boys would want either. They don't want you to cry, I hear. They don't want you to be sad. You need to let go of them. You need to move on. No. I know my boys. They would understand. They understand when I'm sad and I'm crying. Recently, I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of John O'Donohue. And when I think about people that tell me that I'm strong, this is what I think of. He says this in a talk, and I've fallen in love with him. He is an Irish priest, poet, philosopher, and writer. And he says, and this isn't everyone, this just isn't for me, so I'm sharing it in hopes that something in here will resonate with you. There's a quiet light that shines in every heart. It draws no attention to itself, though it is always secretly there. It is what illuminates our minds to see beauty, our desire to seek possibility, and our hearts to love life. Without this subtle quickening, our days would be empty and wearisome, and no horizon would ever awaken our longing. We enter the world as strangers, who all at once become heirs to a harvest of memory, spirit, and dream that has long preceded us and now enfold, nourish, and sustain us. Each life is clothed in spirit that secretly links it to everything else. Though suffering and chaos befall us, it can never extinguish this inner light of providence. When I listened to that, I listened to it over and over and over. It just spoke to me. We all have that light in us to go on, each and every one of us. So my wish, as I finish here today, my wish for you, if you are a parent or someone that's suffered loss, my wish for you is to be kind to yourself, to be gentle with yourself, to love yourself, and to forgive yourself. And I'm going to leave you with this. Again, it's from John O'Donohue. You can find him on YouTube. I seriously I'd love to listen to him because he's Irish. He has a beautiful accent. He speaks way more eloquently than I could ever speak. But I think he's full of a lot of wisdom. And he writes, "May you have the courage today to live the life that you would love, to postpone your dreams no longer, but to do at last what you came here for, and waste your heart on fear no more." I'm not going to fear the rest of my life. I'm not squandering it away. My boys will live through me. They're right beside me. I feel like my arms are like this, and I've got JT on one arm and Garrett on the other arm, and their wings are flapping as fast as they can, and they are making me soar too. And they will forever be a part of me. So thank you for listening to me.